Who here has ever contributed to anything related to Filecoin before? Awesome. Oh, nice. Okay. Has anyone built anything on FVM? Yeah, okay. A couple folks. Has anyone contributed to anything lower level in Filecoin stack? IPFS, libp2p, IPLD, multi-formats? Okay, a couple people. Nice, awesome. My buddies. Who has no idea what Filecoin is, and you're like, please tell me, someone, what is this thing? How does it work? Awesome. Well, we're gonna go into that. So I've got you guys all covered first. Don't worry. But we're also gonna get deep into the weeds. So eventually, I'm probably going to lose you, especially when I start talking about ZK snarks. Because, like, let's be real, ZK snarks are complicated beasts. So don't worry about it. There's a lot of tactical stuff and a lot of areas to contribute to Filecoin and build on Filecoin and be a part of the Filecoin ecosystem that don't involve being an expert on zero knowledge proofs. Um, but we're going to talk about that briefly just because it's part of understanding how Filecoin works. So I'm going to start from the super high level of like, what even is this Filecoin thing? And we're going to get progressively deeper as we go along, and with a kind of a tour of the many different like software modules, like the different implementations that exist within Filecoin. We're going to talk about the different client implementations, markets implementations, storage provider nodes, retrieval nodes, indexers, etc., and kind of how they fit into the storage and retrieval lifecycle for Filecoin. I'm not going to cover FVM or how FVM does block mechanics. Stephen is going to cover all of that in his next talk. So this is, if you are here just because you want to learn how to build on FVM, I'm not exactly going to tell you anything, but it's going to be useful baseline info for what the heck is Filecoin and what are all the different components that you might interact with in building an application on FVM. So maybe you want to stay anyway. But just a heads up, that's what we're planning to do. Cool. So this is our mission. The mission of the Filecoin network is to create a decentralized, efficient, and robust foundation for humanity's information. Juan went over this in his talk earlier. Each one of those words is very meaningful to us. We want it to be decentralized. We don't want to lean and rely on a central party who can decide whether or not they want to give us access to a critical resource that we store our information on. We want it to be efficient. We don't want to be just like throwing money away and doing 10,000 transactions that are not useful for us. We want to be intelligently storing our data, intelligently able to retrieve our data, and we want it to transact as an efficient market. We want it to be robust. When you put data somewhere, you want it to stay the way that you put it, and you want to be able to get it back in the future. That's what a robust storage network will be. Filecoin needs to be robust. It also wants to be a foundation that's like a platform. You want to be able to build on it. You want to be able to augment it. You don't want it to be static and like hold you back from innovating. And it needs to be for humanity's information. It's not just another Bitcoin proof of work network that's just burning up hard drives for no useful purpose. We're here to make a storage network to store humanity's data. And there are incentives embedded inside the Filecoin network that incentivize actually utilizing all of the storage capacity, the whatever it is, 10 exabytes of storage capacity that's been committed to Filecoin to actually fill it full of data. Because if we don't actually do something useful with it, what are we even doing? Why did we even go to all the effort of assembling these resources if not to put it to some useful purpose on behalf of humanity? So that's Filecoin's mission. I mentioned that Filecoin builds on top of IPFS and libp2p. It adds incentives, an incentive layer where you can pay someone else to store your data over time. And it really comes from the fact that in IPFS, there's no payments. You have to run your own infrastructure inside of IPFS if you want to keep your data around, or you have to pay some pinning service somewhere using fiat to keep storing your data, and then you're dependent on that business. Filecoin gives you a decentralized alternative where you can, just work in the Filecoin network, transact with storage providers, with Phil, the local currency of Filecoin, in order to make sure your data stays available over time, and you can make long-term storage deals that the network will verify is being executed correctly. Filecoin also uses and builds on libp2p. It's one of many blockchain networks that builds on libp2p as the networking layer. So this is how nodes find each other in Filecoin, how they route information, or in our case, gossip information. We use gossip sub, similar to many other networks like Ethereum, Polkadot, Polygon, you could name many others. Pretty much every blockchain network that you're like, oh yeah, they're awesome, they're using libp2p. Oh, fun, there's a giant ant on my computer screen. Cool. Sorry. I hate ants. Okay, we also we use the same content addressing as IPFS. We use all the same libraries there. So the way that you transform data so that it's content addressed and stored in IPFS is the same IPLD data libraries that we use in Filecoin. We also have IPFS transport for data transfer for when two nodes are exchanging content address data in order to store or retrieve it. So Filecoin as a word actually means many different things. And folks, maybe feel free to come into the other side as well, because otherwise we're going to start bottlenecking. Filecoin can be used to refer to the decentralized storage network, which is like the set of nodes that are participating in this network together. And I guess also the code that's helping those nodes interact with each other. It's also, I guess, the decentralized storage protocols. Filecoin is a protocol that anyone can implement. There is a spec for Filecoin. There are multiple implementations of Filecoin. We're going to talk about those in a second. It's also a payment mechanism. FIL, F-I-L, is the token that is used to transact, the Filecoin token, which you then use for paying for storage deals, and storage providers get as rewards for performing those storage deals correctly. And it's also an ecosystem. There's a lot of things that I'm going to talk about here where some people are going to be like, but that's not Filecoin. That's like, this other component. It's all the Filecoin ecosystem. We are a broad and like distributed community that creates retrieval markets and storage on-ramps and indexing services, which are all part of making Filecoin work and thrive. Just like, is like optimism Ethereum? Like, it kind of is. It's part of the Ethereum ecosystem. Filecoin similarly has a massive thriving ecosystem, and it overlaps actually a lot with many other blockchains. Many of them are also building on libp2p, building on IPFS. Many of them have integrations and bridges with Filecoin to store their data, and Filecoin offers critical services to many other blockchains to serve things that they can't get themselves. There aren't any other large-scale storage networks that exist in Web3 at Filecoin's caliber. There is not another option, and many blockchains work with Filecoin to get access to what Filecoin offers. I'm going way slower than I meant to, but anywho, hopefully this is useful. Feel free to tell me to speed up if everyone's like, yeah, we get it, let's go. I'll try and be a little faster. Okay, so Filecoin's a marketplace. It matches clients who want storage with storage providers who want to provide storage and sell storage to someone else. And this network manages the interaction between those clients and storage providers so that they don't have to one-to-one trust each other in order to carry out a deal. The network can audit and like help the market clear on those interactions. So here's kind of like the life cycle. The network is collecting tokens from a client when that client makes a deal. It's helping distribute the data related to that deal and holding tokens in reserve to the storage providers that the client has chosen that it wants to make the deal with. In Filecoin, you choose which storage providers meet your requirements as a client. You don't have to. You can trust someone else, or you can take some algorithm by which it will select storage providers for you automatically. There's smart contracts that do that. There's aggregators that do that. There's on-ramps that will do that for you. But the baseline of the protocol, you have to specify which storage provider. Why? Because if you can't do that, then you can't say, well, I only want my data to stay in India, or I only want my data stored in in an environment or with a storage provider that has this sort of certification, or I only want my data stored with storage providers that offer high quality, fast retrievals. These are things that you want as a client. You want to be selective about the quality of service you're getting from storage providers, and different people have different constraints and restrictions. So that's why Filecoin offers that. Again, doesn't meet everyone's use case. That's why we have programmability. That's why we have FVM. That's why we have aggregators and on-ramps, so that you don't have to choose if you don't want to. You can make someone else choose on your behalf, and you can hope that they do it well. So yeah, some of the things you can choose based on, there's location, there's price. Different storage providers offer different abilities or different price ranges. Storage capacity. Like, many of these storage providers are very large, but if you're trying to store, hundreds of petabytes, there's a subset of storage providers that they themselves have 100 petabytes on like a single storage provider system. So if you want to choose 6 storage providers, each of which can replicate your full data set, then you need storage providers that fit that way. There's other storage providers that won't take less than 100 petabytes of data. They're really trying to work with large scale customers. They've optimized themselves for that. So that's one of the areas, especially for those large scale groups. You're not going to want to transfer all of that data over a network. And so there are storage providers that are optimized for showing up at your business and physically syncing hard drives that they can then take away with them in a shipping container so that they can onboard it into their storage provider system. That's the scale we're talking about for Filecoin. You literally don't want to move these bits over the network all the time. Depends on your use case, but Filecoin has users who optimize for doing it the heavier way. Okay, so once a deal is made, the clients have transferred their data to the storage provider and locked up tokens to pay for that deal over its lifetime. So every deal has a window of time that it exists in the network, has a start time, has an end time, etc. Okay, cool. And then over the lifetime, the network, which is the blockchain itself, is going to check each of those storage providers. It's going to sample a random part of the sectors that hold that storage provider's data, or sorry, that client's data. And it's going to make sure, is the storage provider correctly storing this data? Are they able to do a proof that says, yes, I have the data stored in those sectors correctly? We use lots of zero knowledge proofs to aggregate that and bring that back on chain. And then that allows us to verify every 24 hours, yes, this is all happening correctly. And they send the proofs to the network. Those proofs get put on chain. That's called a window post. Post is capital P, little o, capital S, lowercase t for proof of space-time. But you also post it to the chain. Kind of nice. So anyways, that happens every 24 hours. So you have a 24-hour guarantee that your data is still online. So the most you'd go, you get a freebie for the first window post that you miss, where we don't charge you massive fees, because every now and then someone experiences a network hiccup and they miss their window post deadline, and we don't want to take away all of their collateral if it was just a little network hiccup. But the second one of those you miss, so that would be 48 hours after the potential time window that data could have gone offline, they're going to start getting massive fines for not having your data. And you don't have to be doing anything as a client. You don't even have to be paying any attention to it. The network will start finding the storage provider if they don't prove that they have your data online and able to run proofs over. Okay, cool. And then over time, for those storage deals, the network is paying out that amount of money that was set aside to the storage providers, along with block rewards for participating in network consensus. We'll talk about Filecoin Plus in a second, but a component of the incentives around Filecoin is making sure that a storage provider, it's in their best interests to take data from clients. It is incentive aligned with their participation in the network, not to just be an empty, piece of hardware that never is utilized, but actually to take data, sometimes even at a discount, sometimes even for free, from clients in order to actually put their capacity to use within the network. And that program, the incentive program that has many different strategies and allocators within it, is called Filecoin Plus. I'll talk about it in a second. But you could be getting rewards as a storage provider for storing data, even if the client didn't lock up any money at the beginning of the deal, because you're getting a multiplier on your block reward. Are people familiar with block rewards here in general? Okay, mostly not. I'm not going to go into explaining it. I don't have time. Cool. So because there needs to be trust, the network is the one that is making sure there is that trust. It's utilizing these ZK snarks, zero knowledge proofs. Filecoin is actually the snarkiest network, we believe. If someone else knows of another network that's snarkier, please let me know. So I don't want to be a liar. But there's live stats, 13,000 winning posts per day, 72,000 window posts per day, 7.1 million PO reps per day. And those are three different proof types that exist in Filecoin. Stephen, correct me if I'm wrong. Winning post happens if you win a block. Window post happens every 24 hours, no matter what. PO rep, proof of replication, happens just when you're committing a new sector. Yes? Okay. I think I'm right. I had other things I wanted to say. No, that was about it. Okay. Yeah, and there's a number of different roles you can play in the network. The main roles are you can be a client, you can be a storage provider, or you can be a developer, builder, ecosystem partner, infra provider, tooling provider. You can be we have kind of two stakeholder groups that are developers and kind of like ecosystem enablers, but really they have a similar way of engaging in the network. They build software, they build tools in order to help make the network better and stronger. Okay, cool. Here's my slide on Filecoin Plus. This is around creating those incentives for storing data in Filecoin and attracting humanities information. Juan gave a really good talk about this at the most recent PhilDev Summit in Singapore, I believe. I should have brought you a QR code, but if you go on the Filecoin YouTube channel, you'll find this talk. And really the aim there is both to make sure that we aren't building a network that's useless, but also make sure that as the network grows, it's able to scale and compete with Web3, even while it's nascent, even while it's unreliable, even while it's small and the new kid on the block compared to AWS and Google Cloud, so that it's able to build up its portfolio of work where CERN and UC Berkeley and these larger institutions start trusting Filecoin and showing a good track record over time, that we attract that large scale data to Filecoin in the early days. Here's a quick explanation of how Filecoin Plus works. There's this concept called data cap, which is pretty much I guess like it's kind of its own token, but it's not really a token. It's like an asset. A what? Yeah. So when you use data cap, when you apply data cap to a deal, then it gives the storage provider who accepts a deal with data cap allocated to it a 10x multiplier on their block rewards. So that means that they're getting 10x more rewards for taking that deal versus if they just left their hardware empty, which makes sense. They've taken on work. They've found clients who want to store their data. They've done data transfer. They've set up their auditing system so that they can actually make sure they're storing client data effectively. There's a lot of extra work that goes into actually storing client data instead of just like plugging in and plugging out some hardware and like never actually doing anything useful with it. And that helps make sure that there's an incentive for them to actually put their hardware to use. The folks who allocate data cap are called notaries. We're now starting to call them notary allocators because there's many different types of allocators that exist in the network. There's kind of three most common ones so far. There's an automatic allocator, which is, I think, made by Glyph. Pretty much any GitHub ID can get some data cap. I think it's like 32 gigabytes of data cap per month, maybe more. Maybe it's 64 gigabytes of data cap per month. So like, non-trivial amount of data cap. There's a general verification process where there's a decentralized community of parties that review applications. And there's a large data set application, which is a heftier application because you're asking for more data cap or a larger data set. And this community of many different notary pathways can then review applications for data cap and then grant data cap. So your applications for data cap and the automatic verification is a GitHub ID. And it looks up, has this GitHub ID been allocated data cap in the last 30 days? No, and it allocates data cap. So these can be automatic, they can be on-chain. There's open bounties right now for people. And unfortunately, there was going to be a workshop on this, but Rishikesh isn't feeling well. And so we weren't able to do that workshop. But there are open bounties and an open work happening on doing FVM based allocators that can create a bidding market for data cap among storage providers, and avoid there being any collusion between your storage provider, your data client, and your notary allocator. Because it's very important that this is a trustworthy process. Because again, we have to, you know, uh, this one, like, you need to be able to trust the network that it's actually preserving data and it's doing so fairly. Um, Cool. So that's my high level overview of Filecoin. Hopefully, even the folks who are like, I have no idea what this thing is, we got a good understanding. We feel like we kind of know what Filecoin is now. Awesome. So now I'm going to talk about all of the subcomponent pieces that actually are used, the tools and different modules that make up Filecoin. And I'm going to do it by talking about the storage and retrieval lifecycle. It starts here with storage clients. Storage clients is like UC Berkeley. They want to store some data. You have on-ramps. That's many different groups that are working with those storage clients to package up their data, to maybe aggregate data from many different sources. Maybe they have better developer APIs and SDKs, etc. Those on-ramps usually broker between storage clients and storage providers. Sometimes a storage client will go directly with a storage provider. Usually that's because that storage provider created their own kind of like better tooling as an on-ramp to help them onboard clients more effectively. Storage providers are those, members of the Filecoin community. They're running one of the core Filecoin implementations. They're taking storage deals. They're moving the network along. They're block producers within the blockchain. They interact with indexers who are indexing the data that storage providers store. Those indexers and the storage providers as well work with retrieval providers who are fetching data from storage providers in order to send it to retrieval clients. But to do that, they usually have to look up in the index, where is that data? Decentralized indexing, by the way. And then retrieval clients, that's you, me, the world, trying to fetch some content that either we or someone else originally had stored in Filecoin. So there's a whole ton of different components. We're going to walk through this whole life cycle in order. Cool. So starting first with the on-ramps, there's a whole ton of different on-ramps that exist. More of these are getting created all the time, and they're getting more differentiated over time. They optimize for different use cases, and they optimize for different types of clients and experiences. One that was one of the earliest really easy to use, very friendly on-ramps is NFT.storage. Web3.storage is its like more recent envisioning that's broader and accessible to folks like you and me who aren't just doing a 10,000 NFT mint. But this is super useful, was like very, very popular during the NFT boom of, I think it was 2021? Whenever that was. It feels like yesterday. It also feels like ages ago. And worked with all of the largest NFT projects out there, stored massive numbers of NFTs, and helped them make sure that they were storing their data correctly on IPFS and Filecoin so that it was fast, it was retrievable, and it was perpetually stored so that that data wouldn't disappear and your NFT would stop loading, and it was content addressed correctly so that no one could rug pull the content out from under your NFT so that, you thought it was this like beautiful, Bored Ape, and actually it's just a picture of a rug. Whoops. Like if you don't content address it, that can happen to you. So NFT.storage did that and made it really easy for, very non-technical NFT creators to store data on Filecoin. DStore actually has a brand new on-ramp, which is called the DStore REST API, which was really focused on like resellers and folks with very large enterprise data storage use cases. It's this REST API that interfaces a couple of like kind of like deal making tools that are, relatively large scale. This Singularity is the largest tool. It's used by most storage providers when they're storing data on their own storage provider node. It does kind of like the parsing and chunking up of data to put it into a deal. And it has these pretty simple, S3 like interfaces, easy to use, but really optimized for large scale data. There's Lighthouse, also bespoke, also different, optimizing for things like easy FVM connectivity. I think it's the go-to choice these days if anyone is building a FVM smart contract that deals with storage. And they've really optimized for perpetual storage. So they take a larger fee up front so that they are responsible for making sure your data persists in the network. And they can yield and endow that original payment from you to make sure that they have enough funds to keep renewing that deal over time. While the Filecoin network would love to just promise you your data would be there forever, someone's got to pay for it over time, because the storage providers, if people stop paying them and they stop checking, they're going to stop storing the data when their window comes online. And so Lighthouse is the one that is doing that kind of aggregation and longer term persistence of data. Okay, so that was our set of on-ramps. Now we're talking about storage providers. These are folks who are running kind of like core Filecoin consensus clients. We have 3 main consensus clients: Venus, Lotus, and Forest. Venus and Lotus are both written in Go. Forest is written in Rust. And then we also have Boost, which is a markets implementation. Venus also has its own markets implementation. We'll go into that in just a second. But Boost is specialized just for making storage deals and accepting storage deals for clients and storage providers. Whereas like Forest, I'm not actually certain if you can make storage deals with Forest. Lotus had an old version of markets. Boost is a better version. We highly recommend, if you're a storage provider and you're still using Lotus markets, upgrade to Boost. It's better. Okay, so Lotus was the first implementation on Filecoin. It launched 1.0 at the time of Filecoin mainnet, and was there for a while before that as well. It's general purpose. It aims to do everything. It aims to get all of the new actors releases. It is still the most popular today, but it's used for many different use cases. Clients use it, storage providers use it. Especially, it's related to the Lotus daemon tends to be the most capable. There has been a chunk of work happening here on Lotus Miner and workers trying to make that process higher scale. Venus has already done a lot of that work because they've been very focused on. We'll just move to Venus. They've been very focused on the storage provider side of having mining pools and clusters, and so they have a more modular Filecoin client and node that has kind of broken out their storage provider side, their deal making side, and then their daemon node that is doing all of the chain operations. Smart, makes sense. Probably slightly easier to use. The Venus project is maintained and operated by IPFS Force, which is also a large-scale storage provider in Singapore, I believe. Shanghai and Singapore, somewhere between the two. And so they've tested it with their own large-scale storage. Lotus is operated by a number of the folks who are working on like actors and early protocol developers. So less experience testing it on super large-scale storage providers, but core devs who do a lot of kind of like new protocol improvements and research. The last one is Forest. This one's written in Rust, and they've been optimizing it for efficient chain infra services. They've been seeing that running a Forest client is actually much more efficient in terms of the infra costs in order to operate it than running a Lotus node. They've started running Bootstrap nodes and a snapshot service, and these like new archival chunks of data that you can get out of a Forest node, and it's being much more efficient. Forest has been around for, I think they've been like on mainnet for about 2 years now, but it's really just within the last year that they've kind of come into their own around being, especially with the launch of FVM, which is also written in Rust. This is getting to do all of the calling without having to go back and forth between Go. It's more efficient. And so they're really optimizing around just being, if you're a developer or a builder and you just want to run your own node to get access to the chain, and you don't have to do any storage providing, and you're not necessarily making storage deals, this is probably your way to go. Okay, and then Boost. Boost is, if you're doing deals, you should probably be using Boost unless you're using the Venus, whatever that was. Sophocles, Damocles, Droplet. Okay, the Venus Droplet, it does their deal making stuff. And so this gives you all sorts of like a nice UI over your storage deals, and you can like set and tune different parameters. And it has 3 different storage and retrieval transports. So you could use HTTP, GraphSync, or BitSwap in order to exchange data back and forth between your clients and storage providers. And so those are all IPFS friendly and compatible. You can serve it over a gateway. You can BitSwap it to an IPFS node, or you can GraphSync it. I don't know if people are still using GraphSync. It's been the bane of our existence. It was a great idea, but it's always been slightly buggy. So I think most people these days are using HTTP, but GraphSync was the historical one. So there's a chunk of folks doing that too. Cool indexers. There's this thing called the Interplanetary Network Indexer. It indexes all the data being stored in sectors. Yeah, so if you have, the question was, if I have a lot of data in AWS, do you want to move it all to Filecoin, or how might I go about getting involved here as someone who has a lot of data in AWS? And there's a couple of different options. You could start by doing kind of your extra backup copy in Filecoin. So maybe you don't want to be relying on AWS all the time. AWS does have outages sometimes. Maybe you want to pay lower costs in AWS and have another copy elsewhere that you can optimistically retrieve from that's going to be cheaper than AWS. So those are some options. Maybe you want to do an additional copy to what you're currently doing in AWS at first, or maybe you want to start with like a proof of concept in a subset of your data. If that proves out well for you, then yeah, I think the aim would be you migrate your data from AWS into Filecoin for access to cheaper storage alternatives, cheaper retrieval alternatives. You can set your deals kind of in a more open market instead of AWS getting to like sit on their monopoly and charge you, yearly increasing prices, holding your data hostage. So there is a world in maybe the long-term future where AWS participates in Filecoin and offers their AWS storage in this marketplace. I don't think they're going to do it until we really force them to do it by demonstrating that we have the momentum and adoption that like they just have to. But that would be, another strategy where they start competing and taking deals in the Filecoin network stored in AWS. Yeah. Yeah, so there's a couple groups that are working with the, oh gosh, we're gonna have to go back a ways. The dstore REST API. I think this is a S3 compatible API. There's a couple of this is focused on working with resellers, a number of which are also AWS resellers. So you can work with that group who knows how to work with many different like storage mediums. And there's a couple of different groups in this early beta program that are doing exactly that. Yeah, cool. I'm recognizing that Stephen needs to start, and so I need to get out of his way. The network indexer, that's a thing. That's where we index deals and where we go to look up deals later. It's distributed. It's used by both IPFS and Filecoin for storing indexes of where is this data. So the IPFS also queries this when fetching content from, say, a Kubo node. Filecoin storage providers put their records in here, and then that's how you can be like, okay, well, this CID is stored on the storage provider, if you weren't the one who stored it. What else is here? Retrieval providers. There's a number of different retrieval providers. There's the IPFS HTTP gateway. You can fetch content from the IPFS gateway from a storage provider. That storage provider needs to be offering that storage either over a gateway that they are hosting, so over HTTP, or over BitSwap. And so those are 2 ways that you can fetch content from data directly in a storage provider. There's also some nodes that run additional transports or other things so that their storage providers can make data accessible over IPFS gateways. And IPFS gateways are very large scale. This is like 12 million requests per week to one of the main IPFS gateways. And there's like 36 of these. I don't even know how many, but like 36 that we crawl and know about. There's also Filecoin Saturn. Has anyone here heard of Saturn? Yeah, a couple people. This is a retrieval market, a decentralized CDN that's being built to accelerate content that's stored on Filecoin. If a storage provider only has the sealed copy, so the version of the data that's been kind of cryptographically locked up so that you can do these like really fast proofs over it, getting the data out of that sealed sector takes a long time, takes hours. Not like a day, but like multiple hours. It's not great for loading your website. Saturn is a decentralized set of nodes that do caching, and you can hire them to accelerate your content, accelerate your website, things like that. They're running a beta program with 5 to 10 different users right now to continue building out their application. They have like whatever it is, 2,000 points of presence around the world, which is decentralized set of nodes that are getting verified that they do these retrieval jobs correctly. I don't know how it works under the hood. I know. I understand that it's a graph. What's the question?
Is Saturn implementing something similar to the graph protocol?
I don't believe so. You'd have to be more specific. And in what way would it be similar? But the way that Saturn works, just go back one. Saturn, there's these 2,000 plus storage providers. Anyone can this as long as they meet the requirements. So I think you have to have like, I think it's like five gigabit 5 gigabit bandwidth connection and like some amount of terabytes of storage in order to start being a Saturn node. So it's non-trivial. It's not something you're going to do on your local laptop. But if you start being a node, anyone can join, and then Saturn will audit them over time and then retroactively send them block rewards based on the storage, the retrieval deals that they've done over time. The one that you can do on your local thing, who here holds Phil? Am I allowed to ask that? Okay. Small number of you. Who wants to hold Phil? Especially if you don't have to buy it. This is a node where you can put your machine and your bandwidth to work and you'll get paid for it in Phil. And all you have to do is run this desktop application and it's going to start giving you a little bit of Phil every time that you do a job on behalf of this network. Right now they have one, it's a worker node. So it could run many different kinds of jobs. There's one kind of job that is currently running on station and performing checks on Filecoin content retrievability. So it's pinging based on the indexer, it's pinging all of the data and being like, can I retrieve it? Can I retrieve it? Can I retrieve it? Building up a really solid corpus of what data is retrievable, what data isn't. And it's paying out little nodes. I'm usually running one on my laptop. I chose not to run it because I'm on hotel Wi-Fi, and that would be rude for me to monetize the hotel Wi-Fi for their bandwidth. But anyways, I'm normally running one of these. I've done something like, I don't know, 7,000, 9,000 jobs or something. And I've earned about, 0.1 Phil at this point. So it's good, not bad for like a week of work playing with Station. So try it out. It's super fun. It's Phil Station. I should have given you a QR code, but it's live right now. How much is a Phil worth? I mean, it changes all the time. I think right now it's $4.50. Yeah. Thingies like my RAM. It's like not a. I enjoy it. Everyone to do their own. And then last but not least, we have retrieval clients. These are the nodes that are actually retrieving content from the rest of the cycle. And so a great example here is Brave, which actually has IPFS integrated with Brave and is able, I think they also have a Filecoin integrated with Brave. So you could actually make deals for content from within Brave, and you can add content to IPFS or copy CIDs for things. You can load websites over IPNS. And so pretty awesome. If anyone needs another browser that they feel like they should switch to and they're tired of using Chrome because it's really, really heavy, check out Brave. It's a great browser and they're really pushing forward in Web3. Okay, so that's our whole diagram and the various different parts of the code bases that exist. Over time, I also had a high level view of this for all of the different compute nodes and like the Bakuliao nodes and the station nodes, but we can get into that another time. If you're interested in getting involved and contributing to Filecoin, couple recommendations, couple ideas. Start first and foremost by starting to read the docs, and there's a great workshop called How Filecoin Works inside of Launchpad. If you go to pl-launchpad.io, there's a curriculum there. You could also go to curriculum.pl-launchpad.io. There's a How Filecoin Works tutorial that you can go through. It has a set of videos, it has some explanations, and so that'll give you a deeper dive than I just gave you because we had many different folks of different areas in the room. So I would start by upping your knowledge, getting to a place where you're like, yeah, I kind of understand what's going on. Then review the contribution guidelines. These are in whatever repo you're going to contribute to. Look in the GitHub repo, be like, what does it say about what you need to do before you submit a PR in a pull request into this GitHub repo? Once you've read those, you can look inside the issue list, like this one for the Lotus project, for help wanted or good first issues. So that's these turquoise ones or the teal ones in this case. And that filtering is going to help you identify things that have been kind of like groomed and curated as like, this is more doable. This isn't like crazy deep diving into some code base somewhere. Here's some like doable ideas. Hey, by the way, this thing needs to call the close function. Please add a close function to this thing. It's like, cool. All right, it's kind of describing what you need to do. Not saying it's no work involved. There's definitely going to be some learning, but that's a good place to start. Once you've identified a help wanted or good first issue where you're like, I think I can do this, I'm interested, or even I don't think I can do this, but I'm really, really excited about this, and here's my strategy for being successful. Then you can go into kind of like whatever the local issue, hopefully it says in its GitHub repository what its Filecoin Slack channel is. If it doesn't, just search for the name of whatever it is in Filecoin Slack, and that's going to be the best way to find other people building on the same thing. So for example, if you want to contribute to Lotus, you'd go to fil-lotus-dev as a Filecoin Slack channel and be like, hey, I would like to be assigned this issue and work on it. And you ask for any help you need in order to get that done. Can someone give me a really quick walkthrough on what needs to happen here? Or can I jump into office hours with someone and get some tips and tricks to make sure my environment's set up correctly and I know what I need to do? So you can claim an issue, ask for support. Then you can actually make your PR, make sure you test it, make sure you document it, make it really easy for someone to approve your PR. We want you to get your PRs approved. As you'll hear from Juan later today in the PL Dev Guild, it's proof of work. You got to do the work and actually get that work to have impact before you can be rewarded for making the valuable impact and contribution to these projects. But I think some of you at least, are going to be motivated to actually make, test, and document PRs and get them landed and having impact in the protocol. And especially if you ping in that channel, you ping the mentor who talked to you in the first place. Hey, my PR is up and ready for review. Then we can prioritize it, make sure you get a fast response. You can prioritize it, make sure that you respond to the review quickly. We can all be happy. We can solve the PR quickly. And then celebrate when actually that gets into the next release, that actually gets into the code base, and that helps us build a relationship over time. That can be in-person relationships, that can be virtual relationships. We hang out in Zoom channels all the time, chatting about new, cool protocol ideas that we think are awesome, and just talking about cats because we really like cats. So it's a great place to start getting to know some awesome humans who might become good friends and great collaborators, and often creates opportunities to meet and even present at events like this. We have a couple amazing members of the community who are stepping up and giving workshops and giving talks and getting to be manning the booth, getting free tickets to things because they're stepping up within this ecosystem and community. And so that's an opportunity as well. And then from there, you can build on that knowledge and expertise either directly by going and like after you contribute for a while, you have the expertise and knowledge to like build your own thing and turn it into something fantastic. Or you're now a respected core dev within this community, and maybe you want to get a full-time job as a core dev, or maybe you want to harness those connections that you've made across the Web3 ecosystem for significant jobs or resources in other places. So that's what I've got for you today. I know I'm super over. Any really quick questions? Otherwise, I'm going to turn it over for Stephen to tell you an even deeper dive into FVM.
Do you have the link for how Filecoin works?
Yeah.
Thank you. And will these slides be posted online?
Yes.
Okay.
I can give you first and okie dokie. If I do this and I do this, well, I'm gonna have to do this as well. Okay. So now you can, if anyone wants it right now, feel free.
If you can.
I'm gonna do the same thing for.
I don't think anyone got that.
How Filecoin works. And this one has a really awesome deeper dive into different parts of Filecoin storage by Rod, intros into nodes, storage providers, the storage market, life cycle and anatomy of a storage deal, gas, actors, addresses. And there's actually a ton of other content. There's an introduction, there's Filecoin cryptoeconomics, the protocol, DRAND, future work, recording from some in-person deep dives. So there's content in here also about IPFS and libp2p. So if you have a question, there's a lot of great content in there. Oh, sorry, we lost our QR code. Cool, and I'll post both of these in the Filecoin Dev Slack channel.
Yeah. So is there a service provider available who could divide the data, store it with different service provider, and when I want to retrieve it, combine it and give it back to me?
Yes, I believe so. One that you could look at is Banyan. I believe they're doing something like that, where effectively Banyan and there's a program called Spade. I think you have to configure it more yourself, where you just like send it data, it'll aggregate that data for you and store it with storage providers that it thinks are high reputation. So it takes away the like, who do I store this with? Or I have to bundle my data into the right size. And so Spade is under the hood in the dstore REST API. And then Banyan, which is, let's see if we can do it. Banyan.computer. Their new website is beautiful. They just recently came out of beta or into beta. Claudia used to work for me, so caveat, but you know, pretty snazzy site. I haven't played with the tool yet, but I hear good things. Yeah, QR code. I mean, it's Banyan.computer, or you can QR code this.
And has the data ever been compromised with any of the storage providers?
Can you compromise?
As in, was it hacked, leaked, accessed by the storage provider anywhere, anytime?
Oh, you encrypt it like private data? No.
Yes.
Yeah. So you have data that you want to keep private, and you don't want the storage provider to be able to see what it is.
Yes.
Yeah. So you have to encrypt the data ahead of time. Lighthouse, thank you. Yeah. I think Banyan might also provide encryption. There's a couple that do. Where either you encrypt it or you have a storage service provider that encrypts the data for you. And that's the strategy, because once you transfer the data to someone in the world, just like right now, when you transfer the data to Google Drive or Amazon or Facebook or whoever, they can see it. It's there. I worked at Google. There's lots of data there. And they, try and make sure that no one gets access to it who shouldn't get access to it. But like, they have loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of data, and they're in whatever government that's doing whatever, visibility into that data set as well. Like, once you send data somewhere over a wire, you should expect that someone else could have access to it. So if you care about it being private, encrypt it. If you care about like a whole community not be trusting each other, use something like LIP protocol or something with like multi-party encryption, so that no one no one person has all of the keys to decrypt the data. Uh, okay, last question, and then I want to let
Yeah.
Stephen go because I know we're
So
behind.
you talked about the indexers.
Yeah.
So anybody can be indexers, or the storage provider are the indexers.
Anyone can run an interplanetary indexer. There's a sorry, this thing's cutting in and out. What cid.contact, I believe, is the right thing. So looks like there's 7 indexers right now with 100% uptime, and you can look up between them. Presumably, it can tell you which one. Looks like these are the different groups that are running indexers right now. I believe anyone else could start running an indexer as well. But in order, like, I think in order for it to get listed as like, because you could be like, great, Bob is storing, you could lie as an indexer effectively. So these are indexers that are like demonstrate that they are operating correctly, such that they then get used by IPFS and Filecoin as kind of reputable in sync indexers. Once we have enough, we can do kind of a consensus across them where it's like, anyone that's found, you randomly sample 2 or 3, and then anyone that's found to be lying is or wrong is like demoted, and you can do a reputation system across them. But I think right now there is a approval step before it's listed inside of the Kubo or Lotus implementations, but it's not consensus critical. So anyone can add a new one, and you as a storage provider or client can configure your own.
To storage provider or not?
Yeah, so there's an index, and I believe they gossip the index back and forth between each other. That's part of the indexer design. And so every storage provider is indexing its own content that's stored with it and then announcing it, and then any of these can subscribe and put those into their index.
Okay, so they have their separate incentive mechanism, like the index.
There isn't a separate incentive mechanism.
Okay, so
These people operate it just the way that people operate DRAM nodes, because it's an important piece of infrastructure that many people contribute back to within the Filecoin network.
How a marketer can help in this coin?
Cool. It's a great question, because generally we suck at marketing, is my personal opinion, because we're busy making awesome tech. It's good problems to have. But generally I would say like the visibility and summarization, like this week in Filecoin, like these are the notable things that are important. This is what's upgraded. This is like awesome things that are happening in the ecosystem that you might not know about otherwise. I feel like that's a useful thing, just like being a place that's providing that visibility. There's honestly like not that many groups who are doing that on Twitter. There's like 3 or 4, and everyone has different visibility into different areas. So find a niche that's unmet and start creating more visibility into that. I would also say that there's like downside in Web3, it tends to get super tribal. Like I spend actually a lot of time in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm like very involved in the Zuzulu community, which is kind of an in-person gathering, trying to build more overlap and inroads between different ecosystems. Filecoin is, I like to call it the peanut butter jelly chain. Like it goes good with everybody, because who doesn't want storage to combine with whatever it is you're doing, whatever's your specialty? Are you Near? Are you Ocean? Are you Numbers Protocol? Are you Ethereum? Like Filecoin's a great augment to any of those things. And so we'll be the peanut butter. We'll go with, chocolate and jelly and this, that, and the other. Maybe you guys don't do peanut butter. I'm sure there's a better example that would, what is the thing that goes with everything in India where it's like, oh, yogurt? I don't know, like Benchet? Mint. Yeah, that's a great one. Mint sauce. Yeah, mint chutney. Cool. So we're the mint chutney of blockchains. You got to just sprinkle some of that on top of everything. So I think as a marketer, you could help bring Filecoin to those other ecosystems and share the ways in which they can benefit from Filecoin and augment, say, applications, smart contracts, tooling, infrastructure in other ecosystems, especially the whole like Web3 infra. Sorry, Stephen, I'm delaying you now.
No, I think it's good. Sorry.
Awesome. I think that's a great area.